Hello everyone. Welcome to another episode of Play, Watch, Listen. I am Alanah. I am joined by Austin Wintory, Troy Baker, and Mike Bithell. Again, I'm hungover. I'm really sorry if that shows.
I wanna change. I've never done this before. It looks a little different if you're watching the video. I can't see everybody, and it's driving me a little batty.
It looks
How
like
do I
you're
do this?
poking us right now.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I feel
I feel a little bit intimidated.
I feel manipulated.
by this process.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
Troy's
feel like-
had internet issues, so he's on an iPad, iPhone right now.
It looks like I'm in like a '90s music video. You know what I mean?
Oh,
like,
it does.
It's like
Yeah, you're not wrong.
Yeah.
like
You're
We
Linkin
need
Park.
another camera
100%.
doing black and white from the side that we can cut
Yeah.
to for the MTV kind
It's
of
got a bunch of static
Yeah.
over it.
vibe. Yeah.
what the fuck? What are we talking about today? What are we-
Yeah, Troy, you've been real busy all week. That's why the episode is late too. Sorry, everyone.
You're welcome, everybody.
I wanted to talk about the Nintendo leaks. Obviously, we're really late to talking about this, but I think that there's still a lot that we
Alright.
have to say. So, to quote Video Games Chronicle, just to give everyone a recap, an alleged Nintendo leak has unearthed early game prototypes. This one is like interesting for a bunch of reasons. It leaked so much stuff, including a bunch of early prototypes of Mario Kart and Super Mario World 2 and Yoshi's Island.
Wasn't
as
there like
well.
source code and stuff as well? Like it was full on.
Just tons of stuff. Your source code for F-Zero, Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past, Super Mario RPG, Super Mario All-Stars, Link's Awakening, Star Fox 2, Wild Tracks, and Pokemon Diamond and Pearl. First up, I don't understand how this happened. No idea how this
Is that
actually
relevant?
happened. I mean, not really. It's just like it just seems like such a massive security breach that also I want to like off the bat say, you know, it's been conflicting, but I'm generally not in support of it after thinking about it more because there are also like people's personal details and emails leaked, and
Yeah.
it's just it's big
I
and
didn't
it's
know that
bad. Yeah, I didn't realize that.
It's a
before.
theft, right? It's a theft.
It is theft,
It's yeah.
which is like sort of the part that I wanted to talk to you about is
Troy
is-
Troy is calling in from the 90s with a different opinion of that. Troy, do you want to jump in?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, back when the opinions on this were probably more innocent.
Tell
and
us
more
about
ignorant.
Tony Hawk, Troy. What's he really like?
What's a Tony Hawk?
he was popular in the 90s. I think.
I mean, actually, this is where where Troy's calling in from. Like Mario 64 is the hot new release, so this is
That's
actually
right,
very,
yeah.
This is very relevant.
Peach's Castle.
Dateline, 1990. Here
Did
we
I see
are in
correctly that there
video
was
games.
there was like a modeled Luigi for Mario 64
Correct.
that was in the leaks as well?
Yeah, it's been rumored for ages that was confirmed. So, like, you know, it's hard to not look at this and be excited by some of it. It's really cool to find out this information, and while also, like, being awful and like Mike said, theft. But part of what gets me about it is that Nintendo is so secretive about so much of what they do that we actually got information on how they make things for really the first time. So part of, I think I wanted to probably throw this question to you, Mike, is like, is the stuff that other developers can learn from this valuable? Like, is it more helpful for people to have access to this information than not? I choked on my own word. And by not sharing more stuff, is Nintendo like preventing people from learning?
I don't know. I wouldn't say that they're committing a crime by not sharing. Like,
Sure.
I'd be a massive hypocrite because I'm not going to put my source code online. You know, it's not. God, no one would learn anything from that, though. In fairness,
You might learn by counterexample.
yeah, exactly. This is how not to make a video game.
Exactly.
It's useful to see source code. Like, for sure, it's interesting. It came up a few months ago. EA of all companies released the Command and Conquer source code. And already you're seeing a lot of developers kind of poring over the and this is the original Command and Conquer, so this is, 30 years old now?
Yeah.
30,
Like
yeah.
95 or
Yeah.
something, wasn't it?
Yeah, so in the middle there, but like it's like, so it's not like revolutionary, but being able to like skim through, and EA put this out there intentionally for the modding scene because they're doing the re-release of the game. And genuinely, I learned some stuff just from looking over that, and to be honest, actually more looking over the analysis that was being done by other developers of it, because I'm not gonna sit and read the full source code.
But is it-
Yeah, information propagating is useful, and you can often as a game developer, you're kind of trying to reverse engineer other people's games because you don't get to see other people's source code. So Mario's Jump, obviously, there's been like entire research papers on that But if Nintendo released 20 lines of code, they could clear that up in an afternoon, you know? So it's kind of, yes, there's value, but obviously, as you said, like, I'm very cautious about, like, celebrating what presumably could cost some people their jobs, you know, and have an impact.
That you just gave me a flashback to I don't want to take us off course, but there is a funny
yes, you do. Yes, you do.
No, I swear.
We're a lot of episodes in, Austin. Like, you're not fooling anyone. We know. And it's fine, and we love you for it. It's all good. You're welcome here.
Take us off course.
I swear I won't. But similarly, the idea that, like, literally in one email, a copy and paste into the body of a single email, Nintendo could solve, like, decades of speculation. The film music equivalent to that is that there is endless debate over what time signature Brad Fiedel's "bum bum bum bum" from Terminator is in. There is, like, vicious debate about, is it 4/4, is it 7/8, is it 3/4, is it like this
okay, so as
nerdy...
someone who knows nothing about that side of things, that seems like something that wouldn't be that hard to figure out. Why is that not easy to figure out?
Well, because
it's in the score.
Yeah, well, because there's not...
I got the sheet music back here. We can.
Yeah, I'm sure you do. The short answer is that music is written out in a way that is all about kind of proportionality. So it's like kind of like the expression, there's 6 of one, half a dozen of the other, where if you think of half a dozen of one unit consisting of 6 subparts, that's what a half dozen is, versus 6 is 6 of one unit each.
Sure.
Music can be written the exact same way, you know, like notes add up in this kind of pyramid of proportionality. And so you can write things any like literally infinite numbers of ways. And it's complicated further by the fact that that was done on a synthesizer. So for all we know, he just played something and it has it's not even like locked to a metered out matrix of timing. It's one of those that it's hilarious that there have been like kind of scholarly debates about something that all it would take is a screenshot and it would instantly quell this like 35-year running.
I think there's something to be said for, you know, not getting access to source code and not getting access to something like that. That means that people probably invent new things by virtue of trying to figure out how something works.
Yeah.
Because you don't know exactly, there are other people making things in different ways, which is also beneficial because then you get more diversity.
Well, that also happens. That happens in games all the time because the brilliance of games and I've made a good career off of this. The smoke and mirror of games is people assume games are much cleverer than they are. There's actually a really good example of this in the Command and Conquer source code that's been released. The AI for kind of units pathfinding around the map, you know, back then, you know, computers not so good. Pathfinding is actually a really kind of challenging thing for a computer to do. It's very expensive. It can dip your frame rate and all this kind of thing. One of the many reasons that having more than 5 enemies on screen kills certain games because of pathfinding. Command and Conquer ushered in this amazing era of loads of units running around on the screen. Every other developer saw it and went, I guess they've figured out pathfinding, let's go and do that. And they did their own games. Command and Conquer's pathfinding is terrible. Absolutely faked. The whole thing, they basically just run in a general direction they think is you, and they can get lost, they can loop around, they can do all of these awful things. But yes, as you say, it's a stepping stone. And if that had been released as like, this is the easy way we make our AI work, yeah, chances are the other developer would go, well, it's good enough. No one's complaining about the AI in Command and Conquer. We'll just grab that and use that. We all assume each other are doing cleverer stuff, so therefore we challenge ourselves to a higher level. I think you're absolutely right. I think that's true.
I was going to say, if everyone was always releasing their source code, do you think that games would be advanced, or would they just be more similar? Like, would we have just grown a bunch, or would people just be making the same shit?
I think that's a really good question. I think it would be great for people entering, so people who are starting out or learning, like, to have that research, to be able to just go and see how things work. That's a really good question. I equate it to something like GDC. Like, I think information sharing generally has a positive outcome. Like, I'm reading several books at the moment, but like I'm reading like design books right now written by people. So I'll just use the example. I've got it right in front of me.
He's pulling a book out. Look at him
go. There you go. Procedural Generation in Game Design by Tanya Short and Tarn Adams. Oh, sorry, edited by them. And like that is just basically each chapter is written by Derek Yu or another person who's doing procedural generation, and they're writing out kind of their experience. And I can shortcut, like, I could make games for 20 years and not learn all the lessons they can bring to the table with that stuff. So yeah, in theory, source code's good. The thing with source code, though, and this kind of speaks to what Austin's saying, is you do actually need context for it. You do need kind of the scholarly aspects to unpick and kind of work that out, because you can't go through all that source code. I'm not going to sit and read Zelda. That's hundreds, I imagine, tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of.
You're not Tank
of
in the
lines of
Matrix.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, no, I am. I need someone to point out the redhead, right? Like, to use your Matrix analogy, like you have to not redhead. It's a redhead.
No, it is.
That
Yeah,
the
it is. Yeah.
Like
Troy's our resident Matrix expert. Anyway, I'm speaking out of turn here.
He's judging you.
You need historians. You
don't
need,
know what
and
you're
this is
talking about. Sorry, go ahead.
No, it's cool. I know, you need historians. You need academics. You need people who will filter this stuff and figure this stuff out. And I'm sure there are already like archivists going through the Nintendo stuff. And,
well, that's a positive of the internet.
Edward Snowden leak.
Yep.
Like it's just, you need to carve through the data.
But I want to something that you said about like learning from this code with code that's 20 or 30 years old. Is it learning like as a flight of fancy, like, oh, that's cool, I finally have an answer to this question? Or do you actually, it seems like it would be so antiquated based on just the nature of evolving techniques and technology that you would look at it and be like, oh, well, that's cool. That has no applicability, though, to a modern game.
Some of it's that, yeah. Some of it's just being a big fat nerd. But I think there's also stuff that is still applicable. Like the example I always use with people is that I came into the industry in the PS2 era. And I learned, a bunch of stuff about kind of rendering and shading and everything in PS2 time. Immediately irrelevant, because the power of like PS3, PS4, Xbox, whatever came along. But then we go into VR, and all those old tricks are really useful again, because now we have to hit performance, so we have to be, pushing these things forward. We have to be hitting 90 frames a second or whatever. So all of those old tricks kind of come back. And the same is true, I think, of a lot of this stuff. The other thing is often techniques don't age. Like, there's definitely, like, affordances you have by more powerful computers. But, like, you would still listen to a piece of classical music and learn something about composition, wouldn't you? Like, there's still it's the thought process of the composer, not necessarily, like, the limitations. I'm sure if you were a musician who only worked with synthesizers, you could still learn something from a piano concerto. Like, there's still lessons in there. And I think that's very much true of code as well.
The part that I also thought about, that I think, Troy, you're the inroad on this one, but like the idea of like abandoned character models and like seeing the kind of dirty laundry, to me, it would be the equivalent of like unfinished mock-ups of cues that we threw out. I can think of nothing I would least rather get shared in the world than that. And it made me wonder, like, they must archive every take, for example, that you do for everything.
I can start playing some Troy stuff for you if you like. Actually, I've got some. Really
yeah, exactly. Do you have all the rejected hex takes? Like
everything's gold. Everything's gold. Everything's gold.
It would be
obviously.
Well, but that, I mean, you even, let's just say you feel like, yes, there wasn't a single take I didn't just explode in joy over on Hex, for example. Troy's not. You can't possibly feel the same way. Like, there's always, I mean, I know you're always experimenting, trying things, saying, okay, here's the bad version, let's do that, and then see it through. And to me, it sounds horrific to think of that getting out into the world. Like that, like, what if there was, the Naughty Dog equivalent of this, and there was like a bunch of Joel takes from 10 years ago that were like still very early finding it, and like, it seems like that would be awful to have out in the world.
It is.
Has that happened to you?
Never without permission. And I think that's the full context of this. There's the amazing, if you haven't seen it, the
Last of Us musical.
The Last of Us musical.
I have seen that.
Well, I mean, there is that. They were like, Neil wanted to put that out. I was like, here's a fun moment. We wanted to show you behind the scenes moments, so let's put that out. But let's say that leaked before the game came out. That
would have really changed the expectations for what we're in for.
Or it could have destroyed the game.
Yeah.
And it could have review bombed it, and it was like Naughty Dog's off their nut. And it was something that was not meant to be released without context. When what's his name? I think it was Zuckerberg. Bob Zemeckis put out you know what, you guys deserve to see this. here is Eric Stoltz as Marty McFly. And he put that out to show you context. That was something that he was like, I feel it's appropriate to share this with the rest of you, and the place that Back to the Future has within our zeitgeist and within our culture is secure. That ground is sacred and preserved. We can discuss it now openly. And I'm sure he had a conversation with Eric Stoltz too, going, hey, are you cool if I do this? U2, several years ago, maybe 15 years ago, put out a song called Always. And it was fairly familiar sounding, and it's dog shit. And they said, here is, and it's terrible, like the lyrics like, always wear your safety vest, always. It's awful.
Whoa.
And they said...
Perfect.
That's a very weird time for Troy.
Avant-garde. That's amazing.
I bet
that
the song's
frame
incredible.
is... Oh no.
That is unfortunate. I wanted to know how the song went.
You
That
got
is
a taste.
special.
Oh, that's so painful. Look at him jamming out there to his
I think-
U2.
I
Oh,
think
fuck.
That
sucks.
just amazing.
I mean,
Oh
that's
my
definitely
God.
going to be the episode, right? That's got to
I
go
mean,
in the episode.
I'm not going to cut it out, but I also, like, I don't know what he was going to say about U2.
So
I
I actually know the rest of his anecdote, and I can tell it. But
Okay.
it's the first version of one of their big songs. I can't remember which one it is. He'll tell us when he comes back.
Oh my God.
But it's
I feel like it's like the world's most advanced content ID.
Oh, it's
Like felt it and they came descending down and were like,
Well, it's
never.
just smashed in his door and
Yeah,
gone in.
U2
Yeah.
came through the internet and was like, you can't do that.
Oh
your
my
voice is too close.
What
The
are you
pitch is
doing?
perfect. We got to cut it. Well, hopefully he figures that out. That has actually happened to me once before in a podcast with Troy. Sadly, he's having internet issues. It's not been his week. Well, maybe it has. He's just been very
No.
busy. But I guess I sort of wanted to talk to, like, there are definitely things that I've recorded that I would hate to have published. Not because, like, you know, I've said anything inappropriate or anything like that, but there are things that have been, like, tests that I really hated. One was, it sucks
there
so
he is.
badly. Welcome back! IGN
there's-
made me do this. Sorry, we'll get back to your YouTube story in a second.
We're gonna
Troy.
release that video, Troy.
Dude, you have no idea the freeze.
Oh, no,
While he
I-
was singing, it was amazing.
The freeze
I
frame
kept-
was
I
unbelievable.
kept rolling. I kept rolling, and you'll hear me respond to you. Please continue your thought.
Yeah, we were pitching a Snapchat series for the Snapchat Discover pages, and they had me read two versions of a script. And one of the versions of a script, because I feel like I bring this story up a lot, is stuff that I would never say. I may have even mentioned it before on this show, where I had to be like, hottie, Zac Efron is coming to this film this summer.
Lord.
And I fucking hated it. I was like, you guys, I get that if you greenlight this show, like, that's what you're trying to do. You're trying to appeal to whatever Snapchat wants. But if that's the show, I'm not doing it. So why are you even using me to do that? But like, I had to do a full take. That's my job. That's what I had to do. And if that got published without context, that would be mortifying, because that's what I did, and I hated it. But nobody would actually know that. And I'm sure IGN has, like, a stockpile of stuff. There's when I was
We're
editing,
gonna get that trending. Release it, Alanah.
release the Snapchat video.
Shipping Alanah and Zac Efron.
The Alanah cut, yeah.
So bad.
But also
I
in the
saw
in the
that.
moment, the opposite's true as well, right? That, like, in the moment you often don't know the historical significance of something. Like, you don't know what thing is going to be the thing that matters. It's I had a really good. I won't say who it was, because I don't know if this story's like mine to share, but talking to someone who, you know, a very, very big famous historical figure in the games industry.
Brag about
He
it.
was like active.
Yeah,
Say
happy
again?
for you. You have big famous friends in the games industry.
That was it. Yeah, that's my whole anecdote. But like, basically, he was like in the process of trying to track down like materials that he'd just like given away or sold over the years, because he worked on one of the arguably most like historically important games there was, and was trying to, like, you know, I know I had this thing, and it was, and, you know, it's really interesting kind of that we can kind of throw away all of this stuff, and it's at, you know, in someone's this is why archiving and kind of historical context is so important. Games development, you throw away a lot of stuff. You don't save stuff. Everything gets deleted. Everything gets thrown out. There's no record keeping, because none of us are arrogant enough to assume that this game is going to be like the big important thing.
Well, which
See,
is
it's
why
so funny.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead. No, go ahead.
Fuck. Goddamn Zoom calls. Which is why it's so interesting to me that Nintendo apparently does save everything. Like, I was actually surprised to see how much they've archived. And I think one of the main concerns is, like, if this much is archived, then a lot more is archived. And I just hope that this doesn't push people to try harder to get more out of them. But hopefully Nintendo's fixed their security in terms of however the fuck this happened. Like, I really don't know how it happened. It's a massive, terrifying breach. That's such a bummer.
All I was gonna comment on is that it's hilarious. I don't presume, historical significance. I just have a lot of German heritage, and so for me, it's like there's Excel documents. There's all files are very meticulously named so that they sort correctly within the OS, and like, so it's for me, finding old files and the correct version number and whatnot is usually trivially easy. There's just no demand for it.
I wish
I was like that.
I have one thing I keep. So, part of working in media is that nothing that I do is mine. It always belongs to whatever company I'm making it for. I don't even I don't get to keep any. The minute that I stopped working at IGN, they locked me out of that Google Drive, so I don't have any of my drafts or anything. That was all on there. I keep all of the books that I write previews in. So if I'm doing previewing a game, I write notes, and I've kept every single notebook that I've had full of previews. So and I don't know why, but like, if I pull out a recent one, this is a Batman one, where I think this.
I'm trying to think if I've ever previewed anything to you, we have to go to the notes.
It's like Baldur's Gate 3's in here. Like, I just keep all of my notes because I write them all down like frantically while I'm playing a game, and I just feel like those are the only things I've ever kept that I just keep thinking in 10 years when I go back and read my Red Dead Redemption 2 notes, because they're also not very factual. My notes are like, holy shit, this was bonkers. Like, I'm like very candid in what I say about them. It'll just be very cool to look back on. Do you guys have anything like that you intentionally keep?
I only have it because Kerry keeps it. I threw out all of the Thomas Was Alone design docs and everything that I like, post-it notes, and well, she without me knowing, fished them out the bin, and I found, gave them to me a couple of years ago and said, "Oh, this is all the stuff for that game that turned out to be a big deal." And it's
That's crazy.
So yeah, I throw everything. I've gotten better because I guess I'm just I'm turning into Austin slowly but surely. But yeah, like the only reason I have like all of my notes from Thomas Was Alone is my girlfriend had more faith in my work than I did.
Good girlfriend. You should keep her.
Good girlfriend. I've been meaning to, Alanah.
Yeah,
I've been meaning
might keep
to
her around.
Be honest. Yeah.
I absolutely have a response to that, but I feel I need to get closure on my U2 story.
Sorry,
right.
Troy. We will circle back. Where was the U2 story going?
The performance.
No, it was just that a beauty of what U2 did in that was that, hey, here's the original version, the first iteration of one of our biggest songs, which would be Beautiful Day. And the original thing that they put out was a shit thing. And then they went, you know what, we should work on this and we can parse out a better song. And they put out A Beautiful Day. But then they were like, you know what, we want to show you that we're fallible human beings as well. Not everything that we do is perfect. And so they put out Always. And I respect that because I think there's something very empowering and relative when you say our first draft is never our best, and that to me can be, like you said, Alanah, is like, do you think it's informational? Do you think that Nintendo is being withholding by not allowing the industry as a whole to glean information from them, as like, hey, here's how we made it? But the truth is that's all proprietary information that is 100% at the discretion of Nintendo. So the fact that it's out and that we feel that, or there's a sense, I'm not saying we, but there's a sense that we deserve to know this and we should know this and that we should be discussing it.
I certainly don't feel that way.
Yeah.
Well, no. But here's the question. And I'm not sure if this is a fair comparison, but I'm wondering if there's a comparison to when all of the leaked photos, the nudes of Scarlett Johansson or whoever went out. Is this similar to that?
Well, I don't see how you could make any conceivable argument of historical value to that. So to me, like, because there is an academic aspect, like Mike was talking about, of like you can genuinely learn from the leaks of code and early prototypes and like there is a history of games, which is part of the thing I was going to bring up. Like if you guys know Chris Melisinos, and this whole like the thing that he did with the Smithsonian, the art of video games, and like the idea of creating sort of like a museum exhibition of the history of games and the importance of chronicling games and all that. To me, the leaks, as clearly theft as they are, the one little smidge of gray area is that they do fill a need that I think the industry generally is bad at, that I think is valuable, and there should be a better way of managing. I don't see how there could possibly be any argument remotely along those lines with regard to people's private
I would think they probably feel similarly violating, though. Like, I would imagine, you know, that's a very different thing, and it's mortifying to think about either of those things happening. Like, my business emails leaking would be also terrifying as someone taking a naked photo of me. Like, both of those would be really bad, but I would think that, like, yeah, it's comparable in that from the outside, I feel like there are a lot of people who are not talking about this being a massive violation for everyone who works at Nintendo, and how that must actually be for people internally, even though some of them weren't working there at the time that this stuff was made. But it's done without consent, which is the primary thing. Is if someone chooses to share the U2 example from Troy's, like that is them deciding to be awesome and share stuff, and that's cool. That should be celebrated. But yeah, it should never be done without consent. And
right, and that's a great disclaimer to put out there and say, yes, this is terrible and this is horrible and clearly should never be done without consent. But let's talk about it. Let's get into it. And let's say, you know, the I mean, that to me is we say that to make ourselves feel better.
It's true.
But look, the beauty of this podcast is that we all have 4 different perspectives. Mine is going to be 100% biased by my own personal experiences, and I have been guilty of delving through the salacious goodiness of leaked information before. But by and large, just as a person who I am, I prefer, and my general posture is one that I keep my eyes closed before I open my birthday present after unwrapping it, because I want to savor. I love the suspense. I love how long it can take for me to experience, you know, the reveal. I'm a Schrodinger fan through and through. So, well, but of the notion of it exists, you know,
is it
in
dead?
Both ways
I love that.
Yeah. Or alive, you know. But the having been on this side of the, and seeing what happens with a team of, you know, 500, 600 people, when everything that they have worked for, to preserve and protect and carefully craft is seemingly undone by the cavalier and reckless behavior of a few individuals
who are
because
ironically
they know
usually
that this will
fans.
happen.
Yeah.
Who? Well, no, they're not. No, they're not.
Yeah, then they're probably people trying to, in the case of that game, trying to do something negative to I think it's an ego thing. You're like, well,
they may like something.
Yeah,
they may
that's
like
a fair
something.
point. I can accept
but they're not fans.
Here's
fans
a question
support.
for you, Troy, and I really I don't want to put any undue light on what happened with Naughty Dog, but just out of curiosity, if it changes the thinking, let's say that happened 20 years from now, and make it much more comparable to Nintendo.
There is a difference, obviously, because what you have is the success of the success or failure of that game is no longer in jeopardy.
Yeah.
It's also not.
But it's no less a violation of private property.
It is no less a violation of private property, and we can't even get into the ins and outs of how this is so applicable to old stuff. But you're it's fumbling on the 1 yard line. you know, in the fourth quarter of the Super Bowl. Like you are right there, and you've spent 5 years, 7 years really working on this thing, and you're right there, and one person goes, fuck you.
Yeah.
And boom. And so I look at that and I go, it's all the same. It's all the same. If Nintendo wants to go, you know what? We're going to do the coolest like anthology, and we're going to open our floodgates and look in the vault, and you're not going to believe the shit you're going to find. That is a treasure trove. That is it's Willy Wonka saying, come into my factory and see how this shit is made. You may end up like Veruca Salt, but at the end of the day, you'll at least see how you'll see the impassion that we have, and you'll see our failures, and you'll see our shortcomings, and you'll see how we became the Nintendo of today. But if someone snuck in there with the camera and was just shooting everything and caught them all in a meeting, and when they're arguing about stuff and they're like, look at the viciousness of this company, and put that out, or even did that as like, here's a meeting that happened 25 years ago that for whatever, like, you know, like Miyamoto, like if you looked at them and was like, I never saw him in that light, that's not fair. There's no context to it. So to me, it makes it okay because we can benefit from it is not a sound argument, because that is a purely subjective thing.
I mean, that is
like,
yeah. I mean, I think that I couldn't more agree, because that's the same argument, not to Godwin this, but like, one of the things that's always been fascinating in a very macabre way is that in the concentration camps, there was a lot of experimentation on like the thresholds of human pain tolerance. And one of the things that I learned as someone who has spent an enormous amount of time underwater as a certified scuba diver, one of the truly awful things is that a lot of what empowers our knowledge of tolerances of for nitrogen intake under pressurized breathing and all that is from putting humans in chambers and then basically just seeing what happens if you just crank it all the way to the top and then meticulously taking notes.
Is deep as shit. I've never thought about that before. How you are benefiting.
Yeah, I mean, the whole recreational scuba industry is drawing a lot of its data from the knowledge that was gained there. I
know the Nazis did a lot of scientific experiments.
It's not like that's a conscientious. It's not like that's a conscientious like. They keep people safe by using that knowledge. That's the grand irony of it. So it's one of those where, you know, like this is no one could ever ethically greenlight those experiments. But is it unethical to not use their results? And that's where I don't know that I have a good answer to this.
No, that's fucking intense. I also just want to say I fully agree with you, Troy. And it's on me, and it's a personal flaw that I can't help but be excited by these leaks. But I, for the record, completely agree. Everything you're saying is right. I can't turn it off though. I'm like, oh my god, this information is so cool, and like I should be able to do that, but I just can't. Like it's too exciting to me.
I'm the exact same way. When all of those leaked photos happened, I mean, it was.
I didn't look at any of those and still have not. That I can draw a line with. Disgusting. I don't want to look at it.
I didn't either, but there is. It's impossible to say, as someone who finds Scarlett Johansson attractive, go, whew. But then it's like but the decision. It's not the thought that makes us unethical. It's the decision. Right. And that to me is like, I think all of us are like, I would fucking love to see what, oh my God, are you kidding me? To see what an early Mario Kart, I mean, that's to understand the inner workings of it, and to understand how that, especially for game designers, to go, there's so much that I can glean from this. It takes a lot of restraint, and it takes a lot of respect to go, when they're ready to share it, man. That's great. And I think I do think the best thing that Nintendo can do is go, let's walk you through this. I want to contextualize all of this, as opposed to, and I have no idea what their response has been since. I've been off the radar.
Presumably nothing, right? It's Nintendo.
Yeah, they don't say anything. I did also want to comment on, where the Last of Us leaks were concerned. as media how I would approach that, which is that I did not say anything about it at all. And there are some people in the community who didn't understand that. Like, I got a little bit of shit for not talking about it. My thought where leaks are concerned, and I think IGN's policy is the same and GameSpot's policy is the same, is if it doesn't actually provide any service but to tell you information slightly earlier than you would have found it out anyway, there is absolutely no benefit to me to report on a leak unless the only benefit would be clicks. It doesn't help the dev, it doesn't help the publisher, and it also doesn't help gamers. There is no fucking benefit to me telling you, here's the release date of this game, I know it early. All it does is impact someone's marketing cycle, but it's not even like from the perspective of like, oh, you're thinking publisher first. It literally doesn't help anyone to know that before they're ready to say it. It doesn't help you to know the cutscenes in The Last of Us Part 2. It is actually better for you as a player, I would think, if you got to experience that actually in the game. I think that would give you a better experience. If you're
what about this? If you found out, this is probably a really stupid question, and it's an extremity of an argument, but let's say that the build that was going to ship on the game, and there was no foreseeable patch in sight, the second that you put that game, you loaded it up, it would fry your PlayStation. Just irreparably damage. And the developer and the publisher was like, we don't have a solve. Right? It's that whole argument in Fight Club where he says, my job is to go and determine the probability of this happening again. And if the cost for a recall is greater, we don't do one. We mitigate that loss and we accept it. So if they hadn't figured out, oh shit, we're going to fry 15 million units, or however many copies of this we sell, if someone puts this in there, it's going to irreparably fry, and we're going to have to do, and they haven't solved that yet, and someone goes, I just found out if you download this game, you fry your PlayStation. Does that change?
Yes,
that's
because
a leak.
It's a service. I would report on that, yes. And, like, there are things
it's journalism, right? Yeah.
There are things that I've leaked that, like...
There's harm to the public, right? So there's a difference between a benefit to the public and a harm to the public.
Yeah, I mean, everyone kind of knew anyway, but like, so 5 Microsoft employees told me that Fable was in development. 5 of them. And when it was the first 2, I was like, cool, like, I know you guys are sharing this because you know I love Fable and I'll be excited about it. And then another one did, and then another one did, and then another one did, and I was like, okay, and I ended up saying it on, I think I did it on a Kind of Funny show. I was like, I know Fable's being made, Microsoft kept telling me, but I actually now regret doing that. To me, it felt like so fucking many of them told me that it feels like they want that. Like, you can't have 5 of you do like this. What are you doing? Because they just kept fucking telling me. But then when I saw the reveal, I was still super excited because I didn't know that it was going to be in that conference. So I was still very happy to see it because it being in that conference meant to me that it was maybe earlier on than I expected or whatever. But I wish I hadn't known, and thus I wish I had not told anyone else, because I would have been way more excited if I hadn't known. And I guess part of that was that they didn't have a very good lid on it anyway. Like, I feel like I maybe saw you subtweet about that, Mike, because like everyone knew that game was being made in any case. But it's still a thing that I was like, wish I hadn't done that.
Well, here it was because just the British games industry
right.
is too chatty in general. Like, it was just a known thing. But even then, like, I wasn't going on Twitter and I said a thing that people who knew what it was would know, but I didn't. I would never ruin someone else's reveal.
Thankfully, I didn't ruin the reveal. But I did say I knew the game was in development. I didn't know it was Playground. I didn't say that, but I still feel like I shouldn't have done it. It just got to a point where I felt like they had told me so many times that I was like, for fuck's sake, like, you guys are being so dumb. I don't know what I'm even supposed to do, but I shouldn't have done it.
There is a difference, right? Like, some of the stuff, like, yes, definitely, like, spoiling something or revealing something earlier than, like, the best, most fun way of that coming out. Yeah, I don't think the role of the press is to ruin surprises. But there is also the other stuff, which is, if bad practice is happening behind the scenes.
Absolutely.
If someone's being... Troy, you just used the example with Nintendo of, like, Shigeru Miyamoto's an awful person who's yelling at people in boardrooms. I'm sure that's not true, but if that were the case, I think there is a very valid case to that being public information and being something that is shared with journalists.
It depends if it provides a service to the public, but some of that stuff. Like,
I think there's a responsibility because by that argument, if we stick to that argument of providing a service to the public, then what about if we're trying to oust awful predators, right? Which is something we've had recently. There's no service to the public in knowing that Ubisoft has loads of horrible people in it. That doesn't serve the public, but it is the role of journalists to kind of share that story.
Yeah. But Mike, if it was this, it's like Miyamoto-san is a bad boss, and he curates. This is all. I'm using him as an example.
This is made up because we're using this example because Shigeru Miyamoto is
anything wrong with Miyamoto.
Awesome.
So it is, and we could even bring it more. There's bring it to Naughty Dog, where it's like they did this, and this is the culture that they curate. And somebody walking through on a day had that perspective and ran an article, and now it was chipping away, and especially in that moment when it was happening, was just gasoline on the flame of dissension. Of people that were already tired and exhausted, but willingly working towards something that they wanted to work for, and also discussing a topic that Naughty Dog was like, yeah, man, we want to fix this. This is not a good thing. We want to do better. We want to make better games. We want to be a better studio. So they own everything on their face. But
we're never going to agree on that. I don't think, Troy. I think that one's going to have to be a disagreement between us, because
it's incontrovertible. Hold on.
I'm anti-crunch, and with respect, any company, by the time a journalist is hearing about crunch has existed for a long time. The company's had the opportunity to fix that problem.
Okay, but how can you disagree with the fact that a studio says we are wanting to do better?
You put that in the article. You have the. Alanah can illuminate specifics of how this works, but you give them the right to reply, but you still tell the story.
This is my biggest criticism of that Naughty Dog story, is that every single friend that I have that works at that studio, which is a pretty significant number of people, a bunch of Aussies, quite a lot of them,
I'm not knocking Naughty Dog in particular, by the way.
It's just a good example. They all felt that article was shaming them for things they were proud of doing. And yes, that's very complicated where crunch is concerned, because that's a culture of pressure that you are tricked into thinking is something that you should want to do. Very, very complicated psychologically, but it felt like unfair reporting, in my opinion, that it was that coverage was only and intentionally only highlighting the negative side of something, rather than also going through the effort to talk to people who felt opposite in the studio, which from what I can tell is literally all of them.
Is a lot of them.
Yeah.
Okay. So in which case, I've not read the article. So yeah, I would expect that balance, but I would still expect the story to be published, right? It just with more of the dissenting voice.
That's the beauty of journalism, is that anything can be published, right? You know what I mean? There is freedom of press, so we have the ability to say something. What I'm talking about is being responsible about it. But you can say whatever you want, but the problem, especially within our culture right now, is that there is zero, like we've talked about before, Alanah, you said there is an assumption that it is the responsibility of the general public to educate themselves, and we are using this piece, this article, this whatever, to help inform them. But it's still, the onus is on you to go find out some other piece of information before you form your opinion on that. Yeah. We completely lost that. So it's like, did you hear this? This is what this person now believes fundamentally. So it's like, man, Miyamoto had a really bad day. What's that? Oh, he got mad at somebody in a conference call or whatever. He's like, what happened? He's like, I just heard him raise his voice. So Miyamoto yells at people? Yeah, Miyamoto yells at people. He yells at everybody, and then Miyamoto's got a gun. It's like it just telephones out. But even
Miyamoto
if Miyamoto
does not have a gun.
Right, does not have a gun.
No gun. No gun.
There's
a theoretical gun.
He might.
Probably not. Like this. But what I'm saying is even if that were true, that he had a bad day, even if it were true that he yelled at somebody, even if it were true that he did that on a conference call, there is still no threat to the general public to go, now we need to oust him. It's like, no, that is the company's responsibility to deal with.
No, but a journalist could investigate that story. That's the kind of, they would find out, they'd talk to some of his colleagues, they'd go in, again, Shigeru Miyamoto, a lovely guy from everything I've heard, they'd go in, they'd investigate, they'd try and find out what that was all about. And then if they thought that there was a story there, they'd report it.
There are also benefits to people who might have interest in working at Nintendo to know that culture.
And the people currently working at Nintendo.
Yeah, it's
like
not
the,
like
the
it's
games
perfect.
press. The games press also works for people who work in games at the ground floor. People who need the help of a press who's going to check in on their bosses and make sure that the companies are being run well. That's a good natural thing. We want people to be paying attention in that way because it means that they catch the actual, genuine, awful monsters. That's my view.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I was at right after Journey came out. It ends with this song, more or less, called "I Was Born for This." That's sung in 5 different languages, and there was nowhere to find what the lyrics are or what language, what they translate to, because I wanted to write like a blog post, to kind of unpack it, because it was a lot of work and it was kind of a cool story, and I just hadn't had time yet. And so it was like a week or 2 later, I was out somewhere and someone at an event, and someone comes up to me and they go, "Can you tell me what the lyrics are? It's really, interesting." And I was like, and I had been getting hammered with tweets and messages from people saying, "Can you say what this is? Can you translate it?" And I was like, just give me a minute. And I was really surprised there was this much interest. And so this young kid basically comes up to me. They're probably 18, 19. They come up to me and they're like, can you, like, I saw that you don't want to share, but like, you can tell me. And I was like, honestly, I said, I just want to gather my thoughts, because there's a lot to it. Like and I'm not fluent in these 5 languages, and I'll screw it up. And so it's like, I just, I said, it's funny. I didn't think people would care this much. And it's been almost funny to see. It's like torturing people, but I really am just shocked that people care that much. Fucking 5 minutes later, a blog goes up. Austin enjoys torturing people. And I was like, what? And it was like, if you read what they wrote, they were like, "Oh, I just met him at this event earlier this week," or whatever. And it was not explicitly trying to kind of attack me, but there was definitely a clickbaity, like, he's holding something and enjoying how much people are going crazy for it. And I was like, hold on here.
Yeah.
Like, and no harm was done. I'm nowhere near important enough for any of it to have mattered, but it was one of those things that I was like, holy shit, a joke, like tone of voice being removed just from that. 'Cause they were not inaccurately quoting me, but like you remove one crucial part of it, and instantly I was like, man. And I feel like, thank God that was back in 2012. Back when we were young and innocent, and things didn't move so fast as they do now. Anyway, it was one of those few moments where I was like, man, extrapolating this by several orders of magnitude is what makes me realize, high profile political figures or famous actors and directors, and like, where the slightest wrong thing, and it can be not wrong. It can be just wrong through the super subjective or agenda driven view of someone in that moment. Man, can that be repurposed. So yeah, that's why I feel like, your Miyamoto conference call story is a really good example. That there was actually, even in your PlayStation, your frying PlayStation's hypothetical also, there's a whole story thread about that towards the end of the American Office, where their Saber printers catch fire, and they decide to take it upon themselves to be whistleblowers, and they do massive fucking damage to the company, because the company already knew it and already had a fix underway, but they thought they were being these super badass whistleblowers exposing the truth, and they actually made things way worse. So it's like,
I mean, I really do think your question there, Mike, of like, are we benefiting the public by outing bad people, is ultimately my answer would be is that I think it's subjective and on a case-by-case basis. More case-by-case basis.
I think the case-by-case is essential.
Yeah.
I think
that is
it's
complicated.
very easy.
I'm not going to say
obvious.
hard no.
Yeah.
There are absolutely reasons that things should be reported on, and because journalism isn't always about benefiting the public. It is also just about providing information. And my thing with release dates or titles being in development, being confirmed, is that all it does is give you something earlier than you are already going to get it anyway. And like, I had a conversation with a journalist not that long ago who was talking to me about, like, after I posted a thing about IGN reviews, and he messaged me and was like, well, IGN won't let me publish this massive leak because they care about the publisher. Like, there is an ethics problem here. They're just trying to save the publisher. And I was like, I promise you that's not why IGN isn't publishing that leak. It's again, because all you would be doing is saying something 2 weeks before they would be saying it. Like it's you're not providing information people aren't going to get. Like there's just, and it's also again with release dates, especially if I'm giving you a release date early, that release date could change by the time they want to give it to you. And that's happened to me. Like I was told by Sony Bend, The Last of Us Part 2 was definitely coming out the same year as their game, as Days Gone. They told me that at E3. And I was like, I ended up candidly bringing it up once that I was like, yeah, they 100% said that to me. By the time the game came out, it wasn't true. So what's the point in reporting on it? If like, yeah, they said that to my face, it wasn't NDA'd, I didn't sign anything. They candidly were like, well, you know, we are coming out in the same year, but it'll be several months apart. If it doesn't end up being that way, what's the point in reporting a release
Delicious
date?
clicks, Alanah. You need them.
That's it. The only service that you provide, I think, for people who are like very in on like trying really hard as journalists to leak that kind of information is clicks. And I think in some cases they want to feel cool. They just want to be the guy.
I think we do need to cling though to the there are shades of grey here. There is a difference between releasing information about a product's release and information that actually serves a public
I'm being
or
very
a private
specific
good.
in it being.
You are, yeah. No, I know that. It's
I think I would fall on the line of I think the Naughty Dog culture expose is something that is worth reporting on. But I do think it should have been done more thoroughly. Because from what I can tell, even just candidly talking to friends at that studio who were open to talking to me,
here's the difference though. If someone's brought into a place, and let's say I went into, it's like, welcome to the sausage factory. You want to take the tour? It's like, yeah, I want to take the nickel tour. And I take the nickel tour, and the purpose of me being there is they invite me in so that they can show me some things. And then I go out and I write an expose because I wandered off the tour and I overheard things and saw things. That to me that's not good investigative journalism.
It's also sort of illegal.
Isn't that literally investigative journalism, though?
No,
that would technically be illegal, I think.
How's it
going under false
really
pretenses?
How's it illegal?
It would actually depend on what you did, but if you're recording conversations that are privately held when you've been asked on a tour as a journalist, I don't think you are technically allowed to do that without consent.
It's like illegally obtained evidence by the police can't be entered into court for the same reason,
right? I think so, yeah. But I'm not
like if you bust into someone's house without a warrant and see that they have drugs and you're trying to get them on another charge,
they may as well not have drugs.
Yeah, and I believe that's a very important principle for what it's worth.
Yeah.
I just think that if someone's like, if someone brought in is like, yeah, we, Game Informer or whatever wants to come in and is like, let's do an article, and the it's under the auspice and the guise of like, we're gonna do this, but then it ends up becoming something else. I feel like it's, if you're I'm winding this argument as I go, but if you came into my office and we were going to sit down and in the midst of it, you saw me demonstrating behavior, then that's going to influence your article. I understand that. I just don't think it was like, come on, let's talk about The Last of Us. And I was like, okay, let's talk about The Last of Us. And then you do like, here's this cutthroat, expose, like you said.
Is that how that
on
happened?
The Naughty Dog culture. Well, no one's going to come and say, do you mind if I do an investigative journalism piece on your culture as a studio? In the middle of
I assume that the developers reached out to the journalists involved. Is that not how this worked? I assumed it was developers who were complaining about the working conditions.
No, because there was somebody there. It was the. Correct me
They
if
just
I'm
walked
wrong,
into the cafeteria and listened in.
They were there to. They were a journalist. They weren't someone that was just, hey, I want to let you know this is what happened. They were there.
Wait,
and reported this.
But it was Jason, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Jason went to the studio and then.
As I understood it, I don't want to get mired in the.
True.
But here's a great example.
Just as a takeaway, as a summary on that thought, I do think that you are right to the degree that if someone has a very narrow snapshot of a place and makes a sweeping, especially a chastising summary of it based on, such a narrow perspective. I guess you kind of have already said this, Alanah. At minimum, they should allow Naughty Dog the opportunity to weigh in and respond. Because from my
you have to get more
perspective
sources. It's bad journalism if you don't. It's not bad journalism to be like, I saw this and I want to pursue more information about it. It's bad journalism to say I saw this, so I'm going to report on this and I'm not going to explore anything else.
Yeah,
would
exactly.
you go to them and would you be like, hey, I want to let you know this is the article we're going to run with?
I've done that anytime I've given something a negative review even. I've been like, hey, like when I reviewed Werewolves Within, which is Ubisoft's basically just werewolf PSVR game. At the time, It was buggy as hell. Like, sometimes the book that you need to seal the notes wouldn't load in and you'd have to like leave the match and go back in. Like it just had tons of bugs. I told Ubisoft, I was like, this is really buggy. I need to review this. Like, is there any chance that you guys will be fixing this in like the next 5 days? Because I need to get this review up. I gave them a little bit to respond and they ultimately were like, no, we can't. I was like, okay, I have to publish this negative review. But I gave them the heads up. It was like, this is broken and it sucks, but I did tell them that. And I've done that for every negative review that I've written. I've been like, here are the issues. Are there any chance the issues are being fixed? Because then, my review would also be dated for the public too. But it's giving them a heads up. And I would also, like, by virtue of having asked the questions, potentially have a roadmap that I could supply in that review about maybe this is going to be fixed in a month, because the public should know that too if I'm telling them something negative about something. If I were to write a negative story about something, I would always tell them or ask for comment, probably both in the same email. I think that's pretty standard.
And do you feel that by and large that's kind of like standard practice for most people, or do you feel like there's two camps that like will do that and those that will not?
Yeah, I think that depends on the journalist, but I think that like most of the major outlets would absolutely encourage you to do that.
Seems like this is also just systemically a big challenge of a kind of Twitter length, headline length consumption culture, because it's so
what
gray.
stops the scroll, right?
Yeah.
Like for me, crunch is a really, really nuanced subject, because I know lots of folks.
I love Mike's eyebrows every time someone uses the word crunch, because it just goes from this. It goes.
Yeah,
I appreciate his anti-crunch stance. He's very strong.
I do too.
So do the people who work for me, Alanah.
But the thing is, I've talked to developers before that put in very strict mechanisms to stop crunch, and then the team complained. Where they said things like, you can't work after 6 o'clock on a Friday. And people were like, what the fuck? That's my golden hour, man. Like, don't micromanage me to that degree. Like I've had conversations with
there are
folks.
ways, like that's an example of something that there are ways around. So I have team members, for example, who will clock in at like midday because their time, but it's the hours spent is the thing you're trying to.
But what if I want to work? Like, I'm not ashamed to admit that the last few weeks on the path list, there's no way I've worked less than 90 hours a week. Not a chance.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm not getting paid one extra penny for that, and I harbor zero grudges over that fact. So it's like.
But it's also a team of one, right? You are a team of one.
You're a team, exactly. You own a company there.
It'd be different if you were making other people underneath you work the same.
And
Sure.
Here's a question.
As someone in your
agree.
position, you're not the lowest rung on the ladder, are you?
No, yeah,
I have a question though.
But that makes it gray, right? Like because you could.
I work long hours, but I get to own a company. That's the trade-off.
Yes. So
if you're
Mike,
an
here's a question
employee,
for
it's
you,
a very
though.
different thing. Yeah.
If you had a person on your team that everyone else was just like by the numbers, and this is a person that is like critical. What they do is they always deliver, and your street date was X. You needed to go gold by September 1st, and that person was like, I'm not gonna be able to get this done because in order for me to do my job and the practices that I have and
It just takes too long.
You're gonna have to push. What would you do?
You've got a million options. So I've been in that situation. Yes, you do. Yeah, you do. So I've been in that situation.
I love
times.
knowing this. Okay, so in educating.
Okay, so
This is a
genuinely.
leak. This is a Bithell leak.
No, there's a few. No, like definitely we've.
But it's consensual.
There's no game company in history who's not had like a tight deadline, right? There are loads of solutions. First one is if that person thinks their work's due in September, probably it's actually due in October, November, because we always build buffer into all of our timelines. So whenever anyone who's working, we have an absolute kind of buffer structure that means that person has some buffer they don't even know about just for that very occurrence. So I can say in that meeting, it's cool. it's up close, but you've got an extra month and you think you have, please do it. That's the first line of defense. If that's not worked,
lie. Lie.
Well, it's not lying. It's project management, like to an extent. Like you build buffers into project management when you're working on stuff.
I love that. That's so Orwellian. It's not lying. It's project management. You're like George, you're George Costanza. It's not a lie if you believe it.
It's a varying dispensation of morality, by the way.
That's not. No, I'm going to push back on that. Like that is.
I'm fucking with you because I love you, but I agree with you.
You put buffers in. If that's not worked, if they've gone over still, or the task is still way too massive, that's when you have a conversation either with your partners about moving the street date, which I've definitely had to do in the past, or you change scope and you say, okay, well, we're not going to do that then, and you make those tough choices, and that is my job. My job is not to say we're going to make the perfect game and screw everyone who works for me. We're going to work long days if we need to. My job is to look after my team and look after the people who paid me. And
do you feel
bluntly,
like
the people who pay me know that they're second in the queue, and that's.
Let's say that there's.
I'm getting very cruel. Yeah.
No, I love this. This is, and I love this is one of the. I love where this podcast has gone to. By the way, not just this specific, but just as a whole. But let's say you have 5 people. Look, there's this to me, crunch to me, and this is from my adjacent. Not naive, but definitely uninformed. Not even uninformed, but less informed perspective. Because I do believe I'm not just the average Joe walking on the street. I know enough about how the industry operates. But to me, it's the Kobayashi Maru, right? Crunch is not about success. It is about mitigating failure. If you have 5 people and all 4 of those people have worked on this one thing, and the one person is going to be like, I can't do this, and you go, okay, you know what, you've got an extra month. Or to use your examples, like then we scope, I'm actually going to cut this. Those 4 other people that did pull their own weight, now you're talking about,
Hold up there. There's a really
so
that's actually a really you jumped into immediately like a very specific thing though, where you said the 4 people have pulled their weight and that 5th person has let you down. That is an enormous assumption. Like in terms of how projects work out, maybe I gave that 5th person way too much to work on. Maybe I didn't do a good enough job of checking in on that person. Because at the point where the person's going, I can't do this, I need to crunch, they've probably been struggling for months. They've probably been stressed out. They've probably been coming to the office tired. They've probably having more fights with their loved ones. Like, you can check in on this stuff and you can have review processes. We check in on our team. I have a call with every single person who works for me every month, checking in on them. How are you doing? Where's the challenges? Who you're not getting on with at the moment? How can we help with that? How can we help this process? Every 2 weeks we have sprint meetings, which again are pretty common in the tech sector. Not in games industry, we're a little bit looser with it, but we check in on people. We say, are you achieving what you said you'd achieve in these 2 weeks? No. Okay, no judgment, but why is that? Is that we've given you too much? Is it that something happened in your personal life that distracted you? Like, why? How do we plan so that the next 2 weeks we actually hit the line? And if you're doing that throughout, it's like, it's like setting a budget like for your month, right? If you're running out of money in week 3 of a month, that's because you made bad choices in those 3 weeks leading up to that month. It's not, it's planning.
I agree with this.
It's genuinely, it's basic producing and project management. And unfortunately, in our industry, and this is not a specific statement about any individual, in our industry, if you're very good at coding, you get promoted into managing coders, and those are 2 very, very specifically different.
Exact same shit happens on my side.
All over the place.
Same here.
Yeah, people who've been in media for a long time get promoted to be managers.
There are people running McDonald's who are more competent producers than many people I've worked with in the games industry. Because if you're in McDonald's, the burger has to be on the plate, and the dude has to show up to work, at a relatively low wage the next day. So you have to be competent at what you're doing. And the games industry
Mike,
is often not.
I agree with you. Look, first of all, no marriage ever broke up over one. Get it, babies. Preach. No marriage ever ended in a divorce over one fight.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Exactly.
It is no relationship ever ended because of one argument. And I definitely believe like there's a lot of, I even had this conversation this week where it's like a lot of actors want to become directors. They don't want to become directors. They want to be in charge, and they want to somehow undo all of the violations and atrocities that were imparted upon them throughout their career, and somehow, atone for either their sins or the sins of the others through those actions. That's not being a director. And one of the person I was talking to today was like, directing, 80% of directing is meetings. Yeah. And it's having a meeting about this thing is like, and then every once in a while I get to go to set and work with actors. And I was like, that's a very important thing to, and even Neil talks about this.
I get about 2 hours a day. I get about 2 hours a day where I'm able to do what I think most people think my job probably is. And the rest of the day is
the rest is just made up of
meetings
and Zooms and emails and whatnot. Talking
That's
to Neil.
Why we ship on time and on budget, and we don't do crunch, because we're paying attention to that stuff. And it's not just me; I have amazing project managers and producers around me as well. It's worth saying that that like I'm one of a team of people who do this stuff, and fortunately they're all much better at it than me.
It is worth noting, Mike, that Austin, you said this as well. It's like the reason why we give you shiz because we love you. There is.
I just get a little bit passionate about that stuff. I'm sorry. I apologize.
I know, and that's. I don't feel you're aggressive at all. I also feel like us being
Never
able
change.
to get into it is a sign of respect, not only just for you but also for each other, that we can all have this conversation. And this to me is what, talking about benefiting from information. I know more than I did when we started. So if this is the beauty of discourse. This is the point of discourse, is to be able to have a different perspective, be in opposition to each other. And by the end of it, it's the whole reason why I have this tattoo. It's like, let's get to the solution as quickly as possible. But your perspective plus my perspective equals a better perspective for everybody. It's not about I want you to come over to my side. It's like, can you and I find a new side together?
Yeah.
So
I think one of the little points that you made, Mike, talking about one of the solutions.
We've been doing the show for a while, Austin. It's cool.
What's
the guy with the shirts? The guy with the shirts.
It literally says
God,
on
I'm
screen.
so sorry.
Not
I
Troy.
want to say Matt.
We're all very good friends. We're all very good friends.
The point that you made that I think is also worth highlighting about one of the solutions in your toolbox in that instance that Troy was laying out is scoping. Just coming from a personal angle to kind of reaffirm that, because I tend to be the bullish type that someone says, look, we've added this cutscene and maybe there's a way to just take some existing music and refashion it so that you don't have to write 5 whole minutes extra by tomorrow. And I tend to be the kind of type that's like, but it deserves something new. I don't care if I'm up till 5 a.m, like, blah, and like to my own health detriment sometimes, to the detriment of relationship.
100%.
Yeah. Yeah. Like those drunk streams aren't going to make
Ditto
themselves.
as well, to be honest, on a personal level, yeah.
And
but I would never do that to anybody else, though. I would never.
No.
ask them.
And that's it, Troy. And that.
No, I'm not.
Troy,
that's not the point I'm making.
That's it. That's the whole thing, Troy. That's the whole thing.
I completely agree. And I've had people working for me before. I've had people working for me before that later told me that like they were basically working not just long hours, but that they were forging through some actually stories that I won't share even in a vague way, but like very personal stuff that they in no way should have been feeling like they were juggling. And I said, did anything about my management style make you think that you had no choice here? Because I would absolutely have found someone else to cover you, and it would have never threatened your prospects of our collaborating again. Like I want you to have the space to go through it. And they said, actually, in my case, the work was the catharsis that I needed, or was like the not even catharsis. It wasn't catharsis, but it was like the distraction I needed for that short term, because I knew the job was only going to be another couple more days, and then I was going to be able to take that time. And it helped me get through the shock of that thing.
It's worth adding one thing to what you said though, Austin, in terms of like, I think and this is true of so many things in life. We have to be actively good we can't just not force people to work crunch. We actually have to
Completely agree.
or force people to go over. We have to actively, actively make it very clear that the question you asked of what did I do to make you think that was what I wanted, we all have to explicitly say we don't want it.
Yeah.
And it's a running joke in my company
Extra
that if I
layer
see you
here
on that computer at 7 p.m.
Is if you're working until 9 p.m., Mike, and you're saying, I don't want any of you to crunch, but the other people in your studio go, oh, but the boss works till 9 p.m. I should do that too.
Oh, are you
that
not
is
tacitly?
also an issue, I think. And I think that
it is. It 100% is.
I
and
did
I can
have
give
to
you what
one time
my
call
solution
out
was.
one of the executive editors at IGN because I was already working absurd hours. I went 6 weeks without a single day off, constant travel. I already was, and there was one point where one of the executive editors was doing the same thing but bragging about it. And I was like, you doing this, A,
is bad.
Means that I have to do it more. B, means that everyone under you is going to feel like if I want to be an executive editor like him one day, I have to do that too. I get that you're proud of yourself for how much you work, but that is perpetuating a culture on every single junior member of the team that they have to be like you, and they aren't necessarily the people who can handle it in the way that you can handle it, or they don't want to.
And you do, and you have to explicitly state that. So I was called out by a team member once about this, and they were like, you work. The key thing, which we did actually, and we immediately solved about this, or not solved, you're always trying to make things better, you're not solving things, was specifically, it was made very clear to everyone in the company, Mike works late because Mike's making mistakes, or if it's a fuck up, and my team knows that the way to a promotion is not to work long hours. Explicitly, we judge you on how you manage your time. Mike fucks up, Mike gets to own the company, and therefore obviously profits a lot more from our projects long term than the individuals who work, because capitalism. So you're right, it does need to be addressed. It's something though that you have to always be on the lookout for, and I actually did cut down my hours a lot when I started hiring people, because it was something that kept coming up, and that was the best solution, was just to kind of trim that down. But you're right, I'm definitely not presenting myself as a saint on all this. There's always work we can be doing to improve this stuff, for sure.
There's two things that I want to add on to that as well. Number one, to counter my previous argument, the director that I worked with this week, very, very beginning, he sat us all down. We were all super grateful that we were able to shoot again, because we went through such rigorous COVID compliance. But he said, good morning, everybody. By the end of today, you will be tired. So will I. And all I ask is that you keep up with me. That to me is good leadership, because it's like, I'm not asking you to do anything I'm not willing to do myself. The task that is set before us is hard. Know that I will not be in front of you. I will be beside you. And if sometimes I'll be behind you, pushing you. I think that is, it's like, look, making a thing is hard. So if you're expecting this to be easy, then this is not what you need to do. It's not, my job is not to make your job easier. My job is to help lighten the load so that we can all do a hard thing together. So I do think that there is a fair balance between not going, oh, I'm sorry, is this difficult? Well, let's put feather down pillows all around you. It's like, no, dude, this is a hard thing to do. But
that's not what crunch is, to be very clear.
No. I'm not saying
you
that.
work hard, but you work hard within the hours, right? Allotted.
And you also don't you have to, like you said, you have to be able to look at that. You're going, I'm not going to let you go in the red. All right. You're going to rev up. This engine has to go to this in order to get to the speed that we need. But I'm not going to make sure it's like, I know he's in the red. There's the whole scene in Deep Impact where Robert Duvall is the pilot, and she says, you have to shut down the engines. Now we've calculated this exactly. It's like, they always put in a little bit more. She goes, shut it down now. So there is a point where you're like, I have to operate within the parameters and hope for the best.
Somewhere right now, Mimi Leader is like, my film just got my 1997
better than Armageddon.
Oh, for sure,
better
it
than
is,
Armageddon.
But it's still the
lies. We are not going to agree on this, Troy.
All right. The other thing that I would add to this is that there was this whole situation within SAG, as far as like, look what they make us do, and they make us yell, and they make us scream, and they hurt our voices. And I was like, there's a very, very fundamental, critical component to this argument, and that is nobody knows your limitations better than you. It is incumbent upon me to go, hey guys, just to let you know, I know Fred Tatasciore just left, and that guy is just like bananas good at what he does. I can't do that. So don't expect me to do that, and don't audition for a role that you for something that is not sustainable. Like if you can't continue to do that and you're trying to impress people, that creates problems for Mike Bithell. So only do something you can do. Yeah. You know what I mean? So, and the other thing
I know exactly what you mean about the boss working hard and leading it thing is my biggest issue with the idea that a boss would be like, well, I'm working hard, I just want you to work as hard as me, is that I feel like that discounts anyone who might have any issue that is outside of their control. People with major anxiety, people with depression can't necessarily work the same way that a fully able-bodied boss can.
We
but
also
I feel
need
like
to be
your
very
second
careful.
point covers that sort of.
Great. So the thing is,
we need to be careful
about
equating hard work as well with long work.
Yeah, I was going to say
yes.
Those are two very separate issues.
I can't do anything
duration
to
is the thing that I'm talking about here. Like, hard work your ass off for me, but work your ass off for me and have 8 hours sleep and see your family after, you know.
I can't make 50 pounds lighter. I can't. But what I can do is make sure that you're lifting properly and that I'm doing everything I can to make you do that job safely. But if I come to you, what Mike was talking about before, which is so brilliant, is like it's incumbent upon Mike as the owner of the company to go, how are you doing? Checking in. It's incumbent upon the employee to also go, I'm not good, man. So if Mike is doing his job,
then you can punt that back to Mike to make sure that the employee has the freedom to do that, like that they are told at the beginning. You know,
that's symbiosis.
And also that it's not just Mike asking, which is the other big part of that, specifically with a lot of folks, like just making sure that if they're not comfortable coming to me with a problem, because you've got to remember, like I've been around long enough that a lot of the people who work for me played Thomas Was Alone when they were kids. So there's a very different kind of relationship in terms of what we can talk about. So we have other people that they can talk to, and you know they don't have to come to me with their problems, which is good for them, because that takes off. Because you're right, like if you don't seem like someone who's open to hearing those problems, you're not going to hear them. So yeah, you have
a part of being a good manager is knowing who your team members really are and what they individually need. Is like a very big part of that.
I think something that Troy is exposing here is also one of the, whenever young composers like right out of school ask for advice, the thing I've kind of landed on after answering that a bunch of times over the years is that I encourage you, when you're like doing the composer equivalent of auditioning for a job, or even if it's just the meeting, I always say, I encourage you to be as uncompromisingly you as you can be, to the point of being explicitly divisive. Because like when Troy says, director number 1 says, I'm going to be exhausted, you're going to be exhausted, and you're going to keep up. And director number 2 says, look, we're going to have check-in meetings.
Not you're going to keep up, though. That's
I need
a very
you to keep
important
up,
distinction.
or, you know, like, yeah.
Please do. That's all that I ask of you.
Fair enough.
That's all that I ask.
I stand corrected. But the point is, some directors are going to have a very strong, kind of, it's a mischaracterization, but like this iron fist style leadership like that. And then others are going to be very, very, compassionate and Bithelian in their approach, and would never say a thing like that.
I do not consent to that. Like,
I want so many t-shirts.
I'm caricaturing just to make a point. My point is, when Troy said it's on you to audition, sort of knowing your limits and whatnot, I think that the nuance to tug out of that statement is like, if I'm a composer and I'm sitting down with a game director or film director, and we're having that initial conversation, and there are real personality or management mismatches, the key is for me to be as unapologetically myself as possible, and hope that it brings that out from them as well. And we will very quickly discover this isn't going to work. And thank God we're finding it out today and not 6 weeks from now after the ink is dry on the contract and we're already in a situation where changing directions is a shitstorm. And so whenever I tell young composers, be divisive, I recognize all your survival instincts of, well, I have to build a career, I need items on my resume. They're going to be fighting against that because you're going to be this people pleaser who just wants the job at all costs. But the truth is, there are jobs that you don't want. And it's really great to discover that before you get them.
Yeah, well said.
All right.
I mean,
I
there's
love
a there's
this.
a there's
I love
a
this conversation. All right, wrap it up,
I was
Alanah.
gonna say
You're
we
like,
went
all
very
right.
far from Nintendo leaks to like management styles now. I
been
feel
a
like there's
journey.
been a
Yeah,
lot of
dude.
good advice
It's a
in
journey.
here. I'm very appreciative of all your perspectives. Dude, I guess this is what happens when we don't have a heart out. Could
Yeah,
have
it's
kept
true.
going. Could have kept going. It's a whole mess.
And no internet and a weird '90s like.
Yeah,
you know,
thank
True.
you for making it work, Troy.
I'm in like in a
Appreciate it.
New Radicals video, right? Or Jamiroquai.
I actually kind of like it. You should have used it more. You should have used it.
Nope.
More here.
Nope.
Yeah, I especially like it if you get a text or something and it's like, this,
Yeah,
this
I know. I started getting these notifications like I don't need to know what my Nanit is doing right now or my Ring doorbell or whatever.
I mean,
All
you
right,
probably
Alanah,
do need
send
to know
us home.
what your I thought you meant your grandma. I was like, you probably would want to know
No,
what she's up to.
my Nanit.
Yeah,
my
take that
Nanit.
one.
And to put this in the weirdest tangential button, I'm very happy to report we have been slowly over several weeks. We have a squirrel picnic table that attaches to a fence, and it's right outside of our kitchen window, so we can see every morning. And there's this one dude that got just jacked up, probably by a coyote or a possum or something. But he was super ragged, and he ended up looking like Splinter from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, so we call him Splinter. And I saw him this morning, and he was looking rough. Like we were like, he's not long for this world. And we saw Splinter this morning, and he came to the bowl, and he just looked at the bowl, and then saw me in the kitchen, kind of looked up at me, and I was like, all right, dude, we go get some almonds. And so I brought him some almonds, and so Splinter's doing much, much better.
That's
So,
the
good
best.
to hear.
Like honestly,
Happy to
thank you for
report.
sharing. Like I'm very happy to hear about Splinter. I would like regular updates, unless he dies, in which case I don't want to.
I'm worried it's going to go dark. That's
Yeah,
my
I
fear.
don't
I don't know
know.
how invested I want to get. to be
Only tell
honest
me
with
if
you.
it's good. Otherwise, I would like to forget about it.
Mike is
the best
afraid
news
to bond
is,
with Splinter.
Yeah, Splinter. They can't hurt Splinter anymore. Okay, that's the
man.
truth.
I hope he's
No,
okay,
Splinter's
little
doing
buddy.
great.
Good,
Splinter's
good
doing
stuff.
great.
Hope everyone else is doing great. We will see you all next week. Bye.
Bye. That is the core. Oh, did I cut up? Oh no, I can still hear you. Hold on, I can still hear you guys if you can hear me. You gotta be shitting me. Hold on. I'm still here. I'm still rolling, which is the beauty of this. Hello, Internet. This is Troy Baker. What you're experiencing now is known as a technical difficulty, but the beauty is I'm always rolling. And this is actually kind of part and parcel to the whole conversation. I have the right, if I want to stop recording, and you would never hear this conversation. Or Alanah, of course, as the host of this, could also not ever release this. The question is, will she? Will she? Wilshire Boulevard. I wonder if we can get any of this. I wonder if somehow, decades later, this will be released on the internet, and I'll be like, oh no, those were my private thoughts. I should never have done that.